Imagine a classroom where students are engaged in learning. The word bored is not a part of the discussion, and motivation is at an all-time high. Does this kind of classroom appeal to you? If so, you might be a teacher that prefers a play-based learning environment. In this video, we are going to talk about play-based learning and how we can apply it to our classrooms as a tool to support growth, development, and student engagement with learning. Play-based learning is a huge passion of mine, and I am so excited to give you practical ways to apply play-based learning in your classroom. If you are new here, or if you are coming back to join and learn more about your pathway to the classroom, welcome. I'm so excited to share this topic with you. But first, don't forget to subscribe and like this video as we continue to talk about your pathway to the classroom. We're going to talk about play-based learning, and this is a big topic because you might hear a lot of teachers say, I just don't have time to do things like that because there are so many things I have to teach. Or you might hear parents or administrators say, there's no time during the day to have play in the classroom. My student needs to be, or my child needs to be learning. I'm here to change that thinking once again and identify how learning standards can easily allow for more of a play-based environment. As I was going through my PhD program, my research was focused on play-based learning. Again, this is a passion area of mine. I tended to gear towards the early childhood K-2 environment, but I truly believe that play and play-based type learning can be provided to any grade level. We're going to talk deeply about the K-2 environment today, primarily that K-1 environment. But what I did find when I was doing my research was that the word play had many meanings, and it was really difficult for research to really identify what that true definition of play is. Some will say that play is outdoor recess time and kids running around doing whatever they want. Others will say play is when they are involved in imagination and role playing in the classroom or at home. And then still others will say play can be seen as game-based learning. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about that imagination side and that play-based learning side and how to integrate that into your classroom. One of the ways that I integrated play-based learning was with learning centers. And while today's video isn't going to dive into how to implement center-based learning or centers as a part of your classroom, what I do want to say is that if you do use centers with some of the practical tools and strategies I share with you, to make sure you take the time to teach your students the expectations of center-based learning. And by that, I mean, if you do not take the time to set up centers correctly, establish those expectations, management will be challenging for you. Again, this is something that I will continue to share my knowledge with in future videos, but today, let's dive into that play-based learning experience and how we can take something like fall, as we're coming on to right now, and take the play-based learning approach to explore fall through learning standards. So you're sitting down and you're thinking, okay, I'm ready to plan my next few weeks, and I really want to apply something different to my classroom. I don't want to just have another worksheet that they're adding or that they're writing their name. I want to give them something different. So let's talk about how we can take those learning standards and apply those play-based approaches. So if we're thinking about the kindergarten or first grade classroom environment, some of the big focuses of math, let's start there, are adding up to 5, sometimes 10, depending on the state you live in. Numbers, recognizing and naming numbers up to 20. You're going to dive into shapes, you're going to dive into measurement. So if I'm thinking about adding, and what is easiest is if I find a worksheet and the students can go and they can see the numbers and they can add it and they turn it in. But does that really motivate or engage them? Maybe not. So here is another approach. Go to your PE teacher and ask if you could borrow 5 hula hoops for the day. Then go back to either your classroom or maybe just right outside your door to allow for space, and put those 5 hula hoops right next to each other where they're touching. And then within each hula hoop, you are going to add a number 1 through 5. I would also suggest with those numbers that you add an object to identify that number. So if you have the number 1, there might be 1 pumpkin if you are doing a fall theme, or 1 apple. If you have the number 2, you have 2 pumpkins or 2 apples. And then have 2 beanbags or easy objects that the students can throw into those hula hoops, and whiteboards. So we need hula hoops, we need whiteboards, we need numbers, and we need beanbags or something easy to throw. I'm trying to find ways that you don't have to spend a lot of money. Whoever's turn it is goes up, they throw the 2 beanbags, and those are the 2 numbers they add. Now, here is the trick. The trick is that you've already engaged your student that's working through the hula hoops. But how do you keep your other students that might be in that group engaged? Well, that's where those whiteboards come in. Their job on the whiteboards is they need to make sure that they are also writing down the same problem that the student using the beanbags at the time is working on. So if they get a 2 and they get a 3 when they throw their beanbags, then the problem is 2 plus 3, and everybody gets to do that. Think about the difference between giving them a worksheet or playing this little hula hoop game. I think that they're going to prefer that hula hoop game. So let's move into the world of science. There's so many things that you can do in science, especially for fall. You can do leaf sorting. You can do a bunch of things with pumpkins where you're measuring pumpkins with different objects, string, pencils. You can open up the pumpkin and pull things out inside, and all of a sudden you're using your senses. But one of the things that I think would be a fun spin to teach the standard about categorizing is to do a mystery bag. And think about how engaged your students would be with it with a mystery bag. So inside the mystery bag, you can put 2 different types of objects. Maybe you're doing fall versus Halloween, or maybe you're doing apples versus characters, Halloween characters. Find 2 different things and put a bunch of those different objects in the bag. And then either whole group or in your small centers, the students have to ask you questions to try to figure out what those objects are in the bag. Think about how engagement is increasing when they don't know what's in that bag. Now you are also working on asking questions, which can align with your English language arts standards. You're working on social studies where they're having to ask questions that might prompt answers for something. And once they figure out, oh, inside the bag is fall objects, great. Then they get to dump out those objects and sort them into categories. They could do big and little. They could do fall versus Halloween. They could do it by colors. But the idea is that now we have incorporated various content areas, science with our senses and categorizing, math with sorting objects. You have question prompts, so you're working on ELA, maybe a little social studies, being able to ask the right questions. And you have done a great job engaging your students. All right, let's move on. Social studies. How do we integrate social studies without just giving them a piece of paper? Well, there's a couple ways. One of the standards in K or first grade is maps. They always have standards around maps. Also in our early learning classrooms, early childhood classrooms, you tend to have a lot of fun manipulatives they can use. Well, rather than giving them a worksheet on a map that has different legends that asks them to find these different things, what if you allowed them to create their very own farm or apple orchard or something else with the manipulatives that they have in the math center? So the math center can be your area that this particular social studies activity is happening. They can choose anything they want from that center. I promise you the creativity will roll. Those imaginations will be going, and all of a sudden engagement is high, and you have them telling you about these amazing farms. I did this with White Houses. We were working on presidents, and they got to create their own White Houses, and they had the most amazing helicopter pads and bowling alleys, and it was all out of manipulatives. And the level of creativity that came out of that allowed me to see that they were proficient on maps and the key components of whatever it was that their map was showing. Okay, let's keep moving. We're going to talk about English language arts, and there are so many things you can do in your play imagination play area. Maybe you have a kitchen in your room, or you have something else similar to that. But a couple ideas that are for fall is related to the song Five Little Pumpkins. And there is a cute little rhyme, Five Little Pumpkins. Go to the dollar store and get 5 little orange plastic pumpkins. You can number them if you want, so that they are incorporating some numbers and math. But allow that group to find an area over in the pretend play section of your classroom, and they can create their own version of 5 Little Pumpkins. So they have characters, which are their pumpkins, and they are retelling a story about what happens to their pumpkins. They might want to use the similar story that they have already heard. Maybe they have to listen to it first before they get to act it out themselves. But what you can allow them to do is be creative, and maybe they decide that their 5 pumpkins fall off of the bookshelf for different reasons. And that is where that learning is activated and that engagement increases, because they now are retelling a story that they could have done through a booklet, or they could do through this more imaginative play-based approach, where they actually have the pumpkins and they get to make up the story of how those pumpkins fall off the wall. Another opportunity during this time of the year is to pull out the book Spookily. Spookily is one of the most enjoyable fall Halloween activities. It is about a square pumpkin. And so now you have shapes that you can bring in with math, and you can ask your students to create their own Spookily in whatever shape they prefer. They can decorate it, they can design it, maybe they have a name for their character, and then you can do so many different things with this. You can have them partner up, and they have to give clues about what shape their Spookily is and what their Spookily is made out of, and the other student has to guess that. You are involving them with math standards, you're involving them with English language arts standards. They're doing some cooperative learning during this type of activity. So take these different practical ways of incorporating the standards through more of a play-based approach, and you can use that to span across so many different types of activities. It doesn't just have to be fall. Our hula hoops activity, we can do that with letters, we can do that with initial sound, we can do that with rhyming words. There are so many opportunities to take these activities and turn them into something that is focused on what you need to teach at that time. So if any of these activities were appealing to you, if you think this is what my students need to be engaged in the classroom, stick with me. We are going to share more practical play-based learning approaches as we continue on your pathway to the classroom. Thank you.